Welcome back, baseball fans, to the fourth round of the 1978-81 draft. Let's get right into it with the Expos with their fourth round pick. The Expos, interesting maneuver here, but they took, check this out. They took Elias Sosa. Nice 1979 year for Sosa. 97 innings, 195 ERA, was an Expo. And this gave them a full complement of 8 pitchers. Plus, they have a 9th pitcher. And you're not supposed to have 9 pitchers. That's okay. Draft's not over yet. Turn the card upside down. It's because they're going to cash in Raleigh Eastwick at a certain point in the token round of the draft. Simply drop him, cut him, trade him, and replace him with a hitter. And that's how they get rid of a less closer and get a nice guy like Sosa. Clever move by the Expos. All right, Oakland. Interesting pick. So with the pick Oakland had in the fourth round, they selected Tom Poquette, but then they traded him to the Blue Jays. And the Blue Jays drafted Paul Dade. So it was Tom Poquette for Paul Dade. Poquette had a higher batting average. Dade has more positional flexibility. But Paul Dade will platoon at third base with Phil Mankowski for Oakland in the short term. Not a bad move, really. Clever move for Oakland and Toronto. All right, the Cubs. Oh, they had to pick a player from 1980. Remember, this is the fourth round of the draft, so I know which year you have to pick from. You have to pick a player from each of the 4 years in the first 4 rounds of the draft, which makes the fourth round so interesting. And they had to take a player from 1980. And the player they took from 1980 actually wasn't a Cub, but he was redrafted to the Cubs. It's Dennis Kinney. They needed a lefty reliever. That's a lefty reliever. It's exactly what the team needed to set up Bruce Sutter. Now, he was actually a Padre, but the Cubs got him in the redraft. And when I mean redraft, I mean the 1980 individual season is redrafted into 32 teams and 640 players. And that's where Kinney ended up, and that's how he ended up in the stack of cards assigned to the Cubs. That's how it works. So they don't have to trade with anybody or use draft tokens. They just saw they needed a left-handed reliever and snatched him up. Pretty clever move again. White Sox. What did the White Sox do here? Oh my goodness, great pick. So, White Sox were winners of the Commissioner Award. Commissioner Award was the team who most efficiently used the pitching and hitting, the factor of plate appearances multiplied by innings pitched over a course of the season. White Sox led the league. You get a draft pick for winning the Commissioner Award, the 33rd overall pick in the draft between the first and second round. So what that meant was the White Sox had taken their 78, 79, 80, and 81 guys. All were taken, so they can go any year to complete their roster, and they needed a smart move. Okay, you're going to see Pat Kelly is upside down with his 78 card. It means they want to get rid of him because they landed, my goodness, Gary Renicky, 1979 Gary Renicky. That is a full-time, everyday center fielder, anywhere you want to put him in the outfield. My goodness. Monster card in a small sample, under 400 at-bats. But they stole him from Baltimore, so there you go. You want to beat the Orioles win the World Series, that's how you do it. You steal their players. So, smart move by the Chicago White Sox. Love it. All right. With the 5th pick, we've got Portland. Portland needed a 1980 guy. They needed a left-handed reliever, and it all lined up for them, sorta. They ended up with Willie Hernandez. Unfortunately, it's an okay Willie Hernandez. Oh, where we are here. 4.42 ERA for Willie. So, yeah. Not the greatest, but at least he's a lefty reliever. And actually, your lefty relievers pretty much just need to get lefties out. You know, if they get bombed versus righties, no big deal. All right, the Mets. All right, here's a clever move. Need a 1978 guy. In the offseason, this is interesting, in the offseason trade carousel, they traded for Fred Norman and put him on waivers. Well, sometimes you put a guy on waivers. If nobody takes him, then you sign him. So they say, hey, Fred, give us your phone number. We're going to put you on waivers. There's a good chance we're going to re-sign you. And they did. And that's good news for the Mets, who've been basically selecting all hitting to this point. So now in their pitching staff, they have Swan, Serum, and Norman and Hausman as your top 4 guys. And that's not too bad, but it's a long way away from Seaver, Kuzma, et al. Yeah. All right, the Blue Jays, we talked about them already, in that they drafted Paul Dade. They didn't really need him, though. They needed a corner outfield, and they ended up trading for Tom Poquette. And actually, that's a cool player. A 2 in right field with a -1 RMB hit runner. Everyday player, hits lefties fine, and that's what this team needs. 311 hitter. They don't have a lot of everyday guys here. They have a lot of platoons. You know, one-way Saleta, one-way Phillips, you know, one-way Asselstein. I mean, yeah. So, Poquette, 311 hitter. Nice guy to get on an expansion team. No-brainer for the Dodgers in the year of 1980. They took their last keeper eligible, and that is, of course, Johnny Baker with this bizarre card. But this bizarre card, I like how it crushes righties more than lefties, because you face more righties than lefties. 29 bombs for Dusty Baker. Okay, let's take a break, and we'll be back with the next quarter of the draft. All right, Texas, I gotta say, not crazy about this pick, but it's a workable pick. You'll see here. The Rangers took Mario Guerrero to play shortstop for them. They had some tough times at short during this time, particularly defensively, though. This Guerrero card's actually pretty good. He played for Oakland in '78, had over 500 plate appearances, full season, .275 batting average. That's not a bad card. He can bunt, hit, and run. And again, he hits .275. The defense, though. I don't think a team with a 4E 30-something has ever won a World Series. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think it's ever happened for me, though. All right, Atlanta on the clock. What do they need? Oh, nice little fit here. 1980. This guy could be the poster child for the 4-year carryover league. Here he is, 1980 Lenny Randall. And why this is so good is because 1979 Lenny Randall and 1981 Lenny Randall, pretty lousy. Pretty lousy. But in between, you get this nice performance. .276 year for the Cubs. Plays all over the place. And for a team of bashers, they finally got a left-handed guy who can fit in the infield with Royster and Frias. Those guys can get along nicely. All right, Kansas City is just punching the clock on their keepers. They did it 4 in a row. They started with Leonard, Wathan, Cowens, and the last of the keepers, Pete Lecoq. Play first base, nice halfway card, .295. That also pushes Willie Aikens to DH now. Congratulations, Kansas City and Pete Lecoq. All right, if you watched the previous video, the Giants, we know they took Bump Wills at second base. I posted a video, the live draft move. I did a random, just picked a team randomly, said I'm going to do it live, and they ended up taking that guy. And you can watch the drama unfold in that video. Okay. 13, the Cardinals. And might have to talk about this one for a little bit. Sometimes teams just get backed into a hole and it doesn't line up with the year, the position, yada, yada, yada. But then you kind of figure out a new strategy, and I got one for the Cardinals. So, the selection for the Cardinals is the 1978 Cesar Geronimo card. Now, Geronimo is probably the worst hitter selected to this point. We are in the 4th round, of course, or almost halfway through it. And eventually you're going to get a guy who doesn't do very well at the plate. He had 226 in the year 78. But it took a long time to figure out what to do with this team, and I looked at it more carefully and I realized they still have Lou Brock at DH. They got Simmons, probably the best hitting catcher in the National League, and Keith Hernandez, your MVP of 1979. And then I also realized that they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 left-handed hitters. So they could load up. If you're weak against left-handed hitters, and a lot of right-handed pitchers are, the Cardinals are going to kill you. The other thing I noticed about this transaction, look at the defense starting at first base. 1E8, 2E8. At third base, it's Reitz, 1E13, Templeton, 2E40, Martin, 2E5, Geronimo, 1E9, -5 in center field. Almost impossible to go coast to coast against him. And a 2E5 in right field. The St. Louis Cardinals are the only team in Strat to have 7 left-handed hitters in their lineup and the best defense in baseball. So there you go, Cardinal fans. I set you up in that way. When I could not find a good hitter, that was my strategy. And speaking of good hitters, oh boy, Cleveland. This kind of was almost a violation. Actually, it was a violation of best player available. I'll kind of explain this one. The Cleveland Indians, in the 4th round of the draft, they ended up poaching this guy, Miguel Delaney, an Indian from 1980, who hit .341. And all the other teams in Strat-O-Matic are really ticked off at me because they broke the rules of BPA. You're supposed to have your best players picked in order, and you shouldn't be able to get a .341 hitter in the 4th round of the draft. That's the whole point of the draft, competitively. But let me go through their picks. The first pick was Mike Hargrove, probably in the Cleveland Indian Hall of Fame as a manager. Is he better than Miguel Delaney? He hit .325. Yeah, so he wins. The next guy, Dennis Eckersley. Is he not in the Hall of Fame? All right, that's 2 down. So who was the 3rd round pick? Well, I took this guy in the 3rd round, Len Barker. So this was the mistake I made. And all I really had to do was take Delaney in the 3rd round and Len Barker in the 4th round, and everything would have been okay. But I'm willing to bend the rules when it's not really hurting anybody. And the reason why I didn't realize I could take Delaney earlier was this really bizarre defensive situation where everybody had to shuffle. But okay, so Andre Thornton started the draft at first base. Now he's got to be a DH, even though he's a 2E8. Hargrove, who I thought would have to play left field, can play first base where he should be playing. Lee Lacy, who I had in the outfield, I'm now putting him in the infield anywhere I want to put him with bad defense, spelling Kuiper, Frank Duffy, and Toby Harrah. That created room in left field for Delaney, Rick Manning in center, and, I got Joe Charbonneau in right field. That's not good defense. It's very bad defense. It's the opposite of the Cleveland Indians. There you go, folks. Excuse me. It's the opposite of the St. Louis Cardinals, who I just showed you, with the best defense in baseball. The Indians probably have the worst defense in baseball. Okay, enough of that. But the Cardinals and Indians had interesting back-to-back picks there. A 226 hitting center fielder, and then a 341 hitting left fielder. And that would normally be an eyebrow raiser. Like, what the hell am I doing with this draft? Padres. They needed a 81 player, and they needed a left-handed reliever, and it all worked out. But they got their own guy, Gary Lucas. There he is, ERA at 2 for the Padres in the year of 81. Fit perfectly. That's what I mean. Sometimes the players just fall in your lap perfectly, and you just take them. You don't have to think too much about how to do it. All right, your favorite team of mine, the New York Yankees, are making puzzling move after puzzling move. They needed a 1980 guy, and this draft pick comes with a caveat. So they took 1980 Bill North, and now the Yankees have decided midway through the draft that they're going to do it with speed. If you recall in the last video, they traded to get Frank Tavares at short as an ace stealer. They have Willie Wilson as a double A stealer, and they have Bill North as a double A stealer. The caveat is that later in this draft, they're going to cash in their draft tokens and improve North to a 79 card, where he's a 2 in the outfield and hits for power. Pinella's now in right field, and Reggie is rightly the designated hitter now, not an outfielder. So that's the Yankees in all their splendor and grandeur. Let's take a quick break and get back to the second half of the round. All right, Las Vegas. Oh, I like this pick. They needed a left-handed hitting DH from the year of 1979. And as it turns out, based on OPS, the highest rated player on the board is Danny Goodwin in a short sample, 289. But for a guy who was cut, or not cut, but basically the Twins didn't even hold on to him. He was just sitting out there, and he's their DH. So that's it's an okay pick. And the Twins are on the clock. And you could say, this is like when you have a fantasy draft and the guy who picks ahead of you just stole your player. So that Twin player, Danny Goodwin, is no longer available. So who did the Twins take? Oh boy, they needed a 1981 player. And they took old Sal Butera and a -2 arm. With Butch Winnegar, another -2 arm catcher. So Winnegar and Butera will platoon behind the plate. And the Twins are hoarding throwing arms. You cannot combine them and get to a -4 arm, though. That's not fair. But if they have two -2 arms catchers, it means other teams do not. Arizona. Boy, is this team making some moves. So, another team with a logjam. Arizona took left-handed relief starter Dave Roberts. Now, the problem that creates is that they took Fernando Valenzuela, they have Dave Roberts, and they also took Dave LaRoche, and they also have Al Raboski, and a pretty good one. But having an extra left-handed reliever, they have to trade him, and there will be teams looking for left-handed relief help. They have to call Arizona, and Arizona will make a deal. So that's why you saw another team, the Expos, with 9 pitchers. They have Raleigh Eastwick, they have Al Raboski. Both players will be either cut or traded. Tigers. They're just sort of like did the same thing Kansas City did. They just took 4 straight players of their own, and they made a trade in the trade carousel to get Jay Johnstone as a corner right fielder. So they have an outfield of Steve Kemp, LaFleur, Johnstone, and a platoon with Bob Bailey. Man, I'm kind of seeing the Indians overtaking the Tigers finally in this division. They can get past Ohio. Good news. I'd like to see the Indians make a move in one of these years. All right, Pittsburgh. Ugh. Just, I don't get it. They're just making questionable moves. They took, it's a good card. It's a nice card. They took Bob Baylor. 81 card of Baylor. Second, third, short. Good defense in the outfield. It's lefties and righties. 284 hitter. And that's because they don't know where to put him. They don't know where to put it. They got Harrelson, Baylor, Berra, and Kennedy. All journeyman infielders with Bill Robinson, Moreno, and Parker. I don't know. Pittsburgh. You messed up by not winning the World Series last year. You're not finding anything. Some teams just are not finding guys, and that's just the way it goes. All right, the Red Sox. All right, so this is a nice kind of thumb your nose. So the Red Sox do not have a second baseman or a shortstop yet. They couldn't hold on to Burleson. The Denny Doyle days are over. They really need a second baseman and a shortstop. But they said, you know what, screw you all. We're just going to take the best guy on the board, which was this guy, Dave Revering. 290 hitting, halfway player. but that's a nice card there. As a DH, strong DH, taking over the Bernie Carbo role in the team, I guess you could say. And what that ultimately will do is I've turned John Tamargo, the backup catcher, over, because a lot of times what I do is if a catcher has an injury on a 2 instead of a 3 because he played over 640 plate appearances, the Red Sox do not need to have a backup catcher on their team. I'll let, I don't know, Tom Brookins, he'll be their backup catcher. That's what I'll do with if a team, because I only got 20-man rosters, folks. And that's what you have to do sometimes to skirt the rules. Only if the catcher has an injury on a 2 instead of a 3. Because they played 162 or so games. All right, Florida, trade alert, trade alert. So, the Marlins, first of all, they took Lyman Bostock to join Jeff Leonard in the outfield. Remember in the last draft they said they had too many shortstop, Craig Reynolds? They traded Craig Reynolds and Manny Mota to Houston for Jesus Alou and Don Hood and a draft token. And what that does is, for Florida, it completes their pitching staff. They're happy with Florida's pitching staff. Remember, the Marlins almost won the National League East last year. And they got rid of the extra catcher. And Alou is pretty much just like Manny Mota, a DH against lefties, or a pinch hitter against lefties. Very similar card. So the Manny Mota era is over in Florida. It would be over next year anyway. His career is over by 1979. No big loss there. All right, Milwaukee. Oh, what did they do again? What did they do? Oh, this is a thief in the night. Oh, you don't let Milwaukee do this. So they needed a reliever for 1979. They needed a closer. They needed a closer for 1979. And Tom Hume's card was on the board on 3 separate teams. His 79, his 80, and his 81 card. 78. All 4 years of Tom Hume's card were available. And before the Reds could get on the clock, or any of the other teams who had Hume cards, Milwaukee just stole a closer from the Cincinnati Reds. That's all right. You know why? Because the Cincinnati Reds have locked up their pitching staff. They have Doug Bear as their closer, Dave Tomlin as their setup guy. So they don't really miss Tom Hume in that particular instance. All right, Seattle. They love their team. Boy, the Mariners, they have sold out. Standing room only, they sold out the Kingdom. They just love their team. They made the playoffs as a wild card team last year, and they added to their pitching staff with Glenn Abbott, folks. There you go. And Abbott had a very okay 1980. He was 12-12 with a 4.10 ERA. He completes the pitching rotation. Bannister, Parrott, Abbott, D'Acquisto, Willis, McLaughlin, Knowles, and Gossage at the back end. 1 year for Gossage, as we mentioned before. The Rockies. Oh, another thief in the night move. I love it. Love these moves. Terry Kennedy, you can't leave guys like this on the board that long. They're going to be snatched away from other organizations. You lose protection by the 4th, 5th, 6th rounds, and he was a Cardinal, no more. Terry Kennedy will platoon with Joe Ferguson at catcher when he's not being a DH. His 79 card. Love it for Colorado. It seems like these expansion teams are really catching up to the traditional teams. I mean, Florida, Seattle, Colorado, Ohio players are all doing really good stuff. Should be a wild year. Very competitive. All right, the Phillies. Oh, love this pick too. Love this pick. They've had a problem at first base for quite some time, and of course they'll rectify it when they eventually get Pete Rose. He's still with the Mets. So in the interim, they're probably the only team who found an interest in 1979 Dan Meyer, who is fine. He's a fine first baseman. He's not a glamorous first baseman. He's fine. 278, 20 bombs. You'd like more. But when you look carefully, his defense is okay. He's a B stealer. Look at that top line. BAB. As a left-handed hitter, he can hit lefties okay. And the Phillies don't need production out of first base because they get it from guys like this, and guys like that, and that guy, and of course, these guys, Lazinski and so forth. So they don't need to have a thumper at first base. Dan Meyer's a nice pick for the Phillies. Ohio players. Oh my goodness, folks. Oh my goodness. So in the last round of the draft, you saw they added a catcher, Cliff Johnson. Well, they doubled up, took another one. Why not, right? So Cliff Johnson had 20 homers. Gary Alexander, 27. So the Ohio player catchers have hit 47 home runs, folks. This team, oh my goodness. The Indians and Ohio players should be interesting. All right, Houston. Boy, they were having a kind of a weak draft and it all. They made this trade with the Florida Marlins. They had wait to see this. So they were really weak in the infield, and they fixed it all in one trade and one pick. The Astros traded for Craig Reynolds, who actually was a Mariner in 78, but he was an Astro in 79 to play short. They had Cubbage to play third, but then they drafted from 81 the French word for tuna, Dickie Thon, got traded in part of that Nolan Ryan trade. So now they got an infield, folks, finally. They got Watson at first, Thon at second, Cubbage at third, Reynolds at short, and then you just need a platoon guy. So the Astros fixed their roster. California. And the Angels took... the Angels had locked up their pitching staff, and they had 8 hitters. Look over here, folks. They had Baylor, Downing, Jackson, Grich, Lansford, Patek, Ford, and Bill Sample. That's right, folks. They had 8 right-handed hitters. Whoops. Huh. Well, that's not clever. You kind of want to mix it up a little bit, folks. So, they found this guy, Molinaro, 1980 Molinaro, and actually he was good. 291 batting average and an ace stealer. And he'll be the first left-hander in this lineup somewhere. Interesting, the Angels have 8 right-handed hitters, and the Cardinals have 7 left-handed hitters. Interesting. All right, the Big Red Machine. So nothing flashy here. They're just patching up their offense in the right spots. They had Brohammer to play third base. Remember, they added him last year when Pete Rose was sent in the Tom Seaver trade. They had Tommy Helms playing third against lefties last year. This year, it's Garth Orge. Orge actually hits lefties pretty darn good. That's like a 300 hitter against lefties. So that'll help patch up third base for the Reds. Sometimes it's the role players like that help a team instead of the everyday players. And Baltimore with, oh my goodness, with the final pick in the first round. They got on the phone with the Toronto Blue Jays, who had held the rights to Joe Nolan, and they forked up a draft token to the Blue Jays. And the Orioles acquired Joe Nolan a little sooner. Nolan ends up on the Orioles by 1982. He wins a World Series ring in 1983 with Baltimore, but they get him now. And the Orioles are just messing with everybody else. So, I said the same thing last year about the Red Sox. And I think I said the same thing about the team who won the Summer League. It's like the World Series team always has a great draft. I don't know why, but Baltimore's having a great one. All right, so that's 4 rounds of the draft. And the cool thing about the next round is I can just concentrate on an individual year. The 5th round is the furthest year out, which is 1981. The 6th round is 1980, 7th round is 1979, and the 8th round is 1978, and then the token part. Thanks for checking out the draft. We'll see you next time.